All right. Hey, everyone. This is Steven from Campus Inc. We are at Printavo's headquarters today, actually in Chicago. Here with Luke, we are going to do kind of our last series of Zapier integrations. I've gotten a ton of questions, a lot of ahas, and so I know we have a smaller group live today, which is totally cool. So if you have specific questions you want to go over, things that you're struggling with. Today I'm going to go into a couple different flows to help you out. In our last one, we really went over the reviews, and the reviews are great because you can automate that for the most part, and then you can just start populating your business with reviews. There are ways to make it better, smarter ways to do it, ways to maybe put a gap in there so that you can ask, how the experience was before sending them to your review site. But today we're going to go through how to connect a form on your website and really bring that into Printavo so that it's easier on your team when you're quoting jobs out and things like that. So as always, I like to make a little diagram of what we're going to do today. And I hope everyone can hear me well. If for some reason you can't hear me or something like that, just let me know. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So you should be able to see it here in 1 second. Cool. So actually the Printavo team got me hooked onto this new app called Lucid Chart. It's better than draw.io. It saves your files a lot better. It's a lot easier to use. So I just switched over to that. I'm loving it. And so as we go through this, we're going to take a form and we're going to connect it to Printavo. My goal is that I can capture as much information from the customer, put that into our sales funnel, and hope that my team can then react quicker. I've seen a lot of people trying to connect WordPresses, Shopify's, Google Forms. This is kind of along the same lines. And so hopefully by seeing this, you can kind of start to figure out how to connect outside apps into bringing orders into Printavo. This flow is not perfect, meaning there is some manual work that needs to be done, but it at least makes it a little bit easier along the way. So for a form builder, I use a tool called Jotform. It's a really, really nice, slick way to build forms for your website. You can embed them. They flow really well. The data that comes out of there is really, really clean. We use it on our Campus Inc. website when it's our inquiry form. And so what we do here in Jotform is we create a basic form. And on the form, we want to capture as much data like we talked about so we can bring that into Printavo. So one of that's going to be customer info. We're going to want to get first name and last name. We're going to want to get the company. We're going to want to get phone numbers, shipping addresses, how they found out about us. From there, we're also going to want to capture due dates. We're going to take that due date. We're going to throw it right into Printavo. So we want to know if it's a firm due date or if it's not a firm due date. We're going to take notes from the customer, asking them, tell me about your order, describe some things in there. We're even going to let them pick out some products. In a very basic way, I'm going to allow us to add products to line items in Printavo. We're going to allow them to give us expected quantities. I will say up front, there's really no way to put size quantities into Printavo using Zapier, but you can at least put quantities for now. And the last thing is files. If a customer is going to upload a file, we want to at least link that into Printavo. What we're going to do is we're going to take that into Printavo. We're going to find or create a customer. We're going to create an invoice. We're going to copy over all that data. We're going to create some line items. And most importantly, we're going to change the status so that the status can trigger a series of events. Those events can be things like, go call the customer, maybe sending an intro email, maybe slacking someone in your office, texting the customer, adding it to MailChimp, all sorts of things that you want to do after they've come into your funnel. But for today, I'm going to map that Jotform into Printavo. Now, from a high level, for applications to talk to each other, sometimes applications output for their data in different formats. And so one thing that you're going to have to become clever with is how to reformat the data that you're capturing from the applications that we're using into the language that Printavo needs it. And what I mean by that is, the format in which the date is put in there. Printavo has a certain way that it accepts dates. When it accepts, line items, quantities, things like commas, spaces, dashes, all that is going to affect your formatting. And so we're going to talk about how to take data and reformat it so that it can go into Printavo. So we've built this form. We've asked a series of questions. We put in their name, email, phone number, in-hand date. I ask if it's firm or if it's not firm. I even put in there the delivery method. Are we shipping this or are we picking it up? If they select shipping, I ask for a shipping address. I ask for their company and their organization. I even put some basic products in here. So I put Gildan 5000s, long sleeves, hoodies, crew necks. In any form builder, you could make this very generic and just put t-shirts. We could get very clever. We could do, Bella 3001. We could do lots of things there. I put in their desired color, just so they can say, hey, I need navy shirts. I'm not going to nail down exactly what product is and what color offerings that there are. And so hope everyone, it's just showing the flow chart still. Hold on 1 second. Let me just make sure I can do this properly. So I'm screen sharing.
You can drag it on that one, it'll work.
I was screen sharing the wrong one. So there you go. You guys can see that Jotform. Cool. Form builder. All right. Thanks for letting me know, Nathan. I appreciate it. So in the form, again, name, email, phone number, when we would like the products in hand. Is this firm or not? Delivery method, shipping address, company organization. I'm asking them to pick a product, so I'm putting some basic products in there. If you want to get really technical, is there a way to put your entire catalog in there? Probably. There's probably even a way to put pricing in there. I know people have done it with WordPress. But for today, I'm just putting in some basic products right there. And I'm just asking them their desired color. Because really, we're going to have to interact with the customer. If you're very technical, you might be able to connect this to a database that can pull exact colors that the products are offering. I'm not saying that's not impossible to do. You would just have some variable data to look up. Expected quantity. And this is where it's going to fill the quantity field, notes, artwork, and then how you heard about us. You can ask more questions, less questions. Like I said, the reason I really like this is it looks really, really nice when you put it on your website. You can style them really well. They flow really well. And Jotform integrates with tons of different tools. Integrates with your WordPress. It integrates with Facebook. It integrates just about with everything. And of course, it integrates with Zapier. So once we've collected all that data, we're actually going to go into Zapier and start to work on our Zap. And so I'm going to open that up. I'm going to go into a Zap. And what I'd actually like to do is build the Zap from scratch. Now, I built the Zap earlier today just to make sure I knew what I was doing. But I noticed that when you build Zaps, you struggle through different things. Things crash along the way. It gives you a lot of errors. And so I'd like y'all to see how I do it as the errors are coming through, because Zaps don't just happen instantly without any problems or anything. So I built it right here. I know that it works, but I'm going to build it again from a completely new Zap, just so you can see my thought process going through all of this. So I'm going to click on Make a Zap. Okay. And the first thing I'm going to do is what we call what's the trigger for the event, right? So the trigger is a Jotform inquiry. Okay. And choose a trigger. When we get a new submission, I want the Zap to start. Okay. I'm going to connect my Jotform account. And I'm going to have to pick out the form name. We call it form to Zap demo. That's what I named it. And I'm going to hit continue. One thing I'm going to do right away is I'm going to test and review. When you test and review, basically it's running that instance of that Zap at that very moment to see what data is going to pull back right away. So I have a submission that we pulled. It is Luke just put it in just a couple minutes ago, and it's got all the basic information that we need. I can compare the submission to the actual form to make sure everything's there, but you will always need to put in sample data so that you can actually build your Zap, because as you're building it, you're going to run tests every step of the way, and you're going to go to the next step as long as you've passed the first test. So first test was getting in the information from Luke. That came in. And so what I'm going to think about is when I build my Zaps, I take my beginning Zap and what the end Zap is, and then I figure out what Zaps I have to do in between to get the two to work. So with the end in mind, I'm going to look up Printavo, and I'm going to say, I want to create an invoice, and I'm going to hit continue. Okay. And so I take my action, my beginning action, right? Or my beginning trigger, and then I take the final step of the action. And what we're going to do is kind of make this like a hamburger almost, where we're going to put in different steps along the way that are going to format things differently for us as we come across problems. So the first thing it's asking me to do is to create is to choose a Printavo account. So I'm going to connect my Campus Inc. account. And the first question it's going to ask me is user. So when you're making an invoice on Printavo, it's going to ask who the user is every single time. And this way, if it's a salesperson or something like that, this is what we call the owner right here. Now, the owner, this can be, like I said, your salesperson. It could be the same person every time. It probably should be the same person every time, or the same Printavo account. Could you get detailed enough where they could pick out their salesperson? You could probably figure out a way to do that. But for today, I want Printavo to make this quote under the same account every single time. In our case, I'm going to make it under my account. Now, when you click user and you pull the drop downs, you're going to see it's only going to list 20 of your last users. If you have more than those users, you're going to need to go into Printavo and figure out what your user ID is. You can't just type your name. You actually have to find the code here. So if you click on my account and you go into users and I select my name, I can actually see up here in the URL what my user code is. My user code is 2062. So when connected to my account, I want every time to use a custom value of 2062. What that's going to do is it's going to put every inquiry that comes into Printavo under my name as the owner. And so that's the first thing right there. That might be a little tricky for you if you don't know, where's the user coming from? I'm typing in my name, it's not coming. And it says right here, provide the user ID, not the name. And you just want that value in there every time. Nickname. This is on an order exactly where you nickname the order. Now, you might not have a nickname for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take what Luke entered into my form. I'll probably just take the company name and call it Printavo order. And Printavo is the company that filled this out. So that's the order right there. Now for the price, I'm going to leave it as $0 because it will not calculate a price for you. I don't want it to try and put in a price right now. If you're savvy and you can figure out a way to connect the item that they pick to a price with a decoration method, all power to you. That would be something that would kind of be a high level thing where you would connect, an outside pricing matrix that was operated in a spreadsheet. You would have them select the product, and based on that product, it would input a price. It can be done. I know people have done it through WordPress, things like that. But for today, I just want it to go into Printavo, make the price $0, and at least give me the quantity for what we're working with. So the quantity is what Luke put in there, my expected quantity. And I believe that number is 55 on the demo. And under the description, I'm going to put in there what Luke picked out as an item. So it looks like he picked out Gildan long sleeves. And I'm actually going to put in there, because there's no spot for color, I'm still going to put it in the item description just so we have it somewhere. Because really what's going to happen is someone's going to have to come into here and actually hard code the actual products they want. This is just kind of a way to get everything in there. So with the customer due date, I'm going to put in the hard due date that Luke placed. And so the submission that Luke put in, we said, give us your hard due date. Let's see here. And as you can see, it says 2019-12-20. Cool. So I'm going through here and I'm filling this out as I think it would work. And what I'm going to start to run into are some issues because of formatting. So now it's going to ask me to add a customer. Well, I should probably figure out how to add the customer from the Jotform, but I also don't want it to create a new customer every single time, because that gets a little annoying in Printavo, and we want to make sure that we can search for that customer. So right here, it actually notes you to have a search step. Add a search step. Okay, add it. And we search based on email addresses. So I look in the submission, I pull Luke's email, and I click create customer if they don't exist. So it asks for my first name, or for the first name. And right here, I notice that it has Luke's first and last name. Now that's not good for Printavo formatting. So what we're going to see here is we're going to take that data that came in from Jotform, and we're actually going to split it so that we can put Luke's first name there and his last name right there for Gardner. So I'm going to put my first slice of lettuce in the hamburger. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the plus button, and I'm going to click the formatter tool. The formatter tool is going to take text, date, numbers. Utilities would be choosing a value from a list or looking it up in a table, but we're going to take text and we're going to split it. So I'm going to transform right here. It'll say split text. And the input it's going to give is the first and last name. And by default, anytime there's a space, it'll create a new line. And what I'd like it to do is create them as separate fields. So I want to take Luke Gardner, and I want it to be Luke in one field, Gardner in the next field. So I'm going to click continue, and I'm going to test it, and I'm going to see that it outputted Luke Gardner. Perfect. So what I can actually do now is if I go into that Finder Create Customer, we can go back to that step, and now we can change the field to Luke, first name, Gardner, last name. And what we can do is now we can start to add the company information. So like we said, we're adding company, we're adding a phone number, we're adding some notes. I'm going to put in how they found out about us. In this case, I just had some basic things in there. One of them was internet. I'm going to actually input a shipping address. So we're going to try that again. And we're going to put in the shipping address. But what you noticed is the same exact thing. Jotform took a shipping address and made it on one line. But really, Printavo needs it in address, city, state, zip code. So again, I'm going to go to top of my Zap. I'm just going to name this so I can stay really organized. So the first thing we did was we format first and last name. The next thing we're going to do, so we'll add another slice to our burger. And so we're going to format text again. And I'm going to take the address and split the text one more time. The input value is going to be the address. And I like to separate it by commas, because if we look at this address, every time there's a comma, that's basically a line break. And we want to segment this as separate fields. I'm going to name this as address formatter. And I'm going to click continue. I'm going to test that. And I'll see, perfect. It listed the street address, even the unit number, the address right there. You guys can send Printavo Christmas cards. There's their address right there. And so then I go back to creating my customer. And I start to see, okay, we got the name right, but now we need to put the shipping address. So I'm going to click that plus sign. I'm going to click on that address formatter I just built, and I'm going to add the address as it wants in Zapier. Put the city in there, state, zip code. And if we really want to be fancy, we can put in the country. Fine. I'm going to click continue. And as we tested that out, it says, I'm going to test it, but then it gives me an error. It says to finish the step, you must first take care of some issues in other parts of your Zap. Step 4 needs attention. I don't have a step 4, so I'm going to delete that. And we're going to test it again. It says, we found a customer. We were able to find a customer in your Printavo account. I put, some fake data in earlier. It searched based on Luke's email address, and it found all that in there. If not, it would have made that customer for us. But because it either found or created the customer, we know that the Zap was successful. So we click done, and then we go back to that invoice we were working on. So we've got in there the price is 0, an in hands date, and then we don't necessarily have to put the shipping address because we put that on the customer side. But in the notes, we can start to put things like, in hand date firm ? And we can put the submission that Luke put in, whether it was firm or not. When would you like your products in hand? So it'll show that on every single order. It'll say in hand date firm, and then whatever the customer said, yes or no. In the production notes, we're going to take all the info that Luke dumped us. Perhaps he gave us, field notes about the job. And I'm also going to put the link to the artwork file. And I'm going to say artwork can be found here. Artwork uploads. Now, I don't believe it can add a production file for you, which is not there yet, but at least you can get the link to the file that the customer gave. So I'm going to check through this, and it looks like there's 2 more required fields. So one of the required fields is invoice status. I made a status, and I called it new inquiry. And the reason I did that is because I'm going to have that status trigger something else. So I have a status that I built in Printavo that's called new inquiry, please follow up. And so when it goes and hits that status, it can then, Slack me or message the salesperson or start to do other things. But I want to set a custom status every time that comes in. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a production due date. Now, your customers are not required, or they have no way of figuring out when your job's going to be produced. So what I actually take for production due date is I put the day that the Zap actually happens. Because if we look at our Printavo calendars, we'll see that it turns right in front of our calendar, right under our noses. and that way we can at least see it. So that's the way of it coming on your calendar, basically. So to insert the date or time when the Zap occurs, you can actually find on Zapier, they actually have some like short coding. So I'll put that in the chat so you guys can see. But they basically say if you put this text in, it'll put the date of today. And that's all I'm looking for is just today's date. So production due date, and we want this little short code right here. Just copy and paste it. Perfect. Generated when the Zap runs. Cool. Now I'm going to hit continue, and I'm going to test it. And it says, uh-oh, we had trouble sending your test through. Unable to create a resource. This can occur if the information entered into a field is not in the correct format. Double check that are using correct formats into the value fields. Okay, so I'm noticing that there's a bug somewhere in here. And so as I go through it, I have to start to look at and figure out where we have a problem. And so what I'm noticing right here is the in-hand date is not the correct format. Printavo would like month, month, date, date, year, year. And Jotform gave it to us out in year, month, day. So unfortunately, it's kind of tough to catch something like that. But that's why it's so important to read this little print under here that says format is important. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to build a little formatter where I'm going to format. I'm going to take date and time, click continue, and it's going to transform. So format the date, and our input value is going to be when Luke said he needed them. And it's going to output into any format that you want. So what Zapier is saying is we understand that all these different applications have different formats. So pick whichever one you want. In this case, month, month, date, date, year, year. And I believe you need to have the full year there. You can't have the short code. I'll click continue. I'm going to test that. And boom, 12/20/2019. Perfect. So I go back into here. I go into choosing the app, and then I go in and I look at that value and I say, okay, let's take the value from, oh, not the date. Yep, the date and time right there. Boom. And I think we got it. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to test it. And it says a test order was just sent to Printavo now. So what I can do now is I can go into Printavo and I can just type in Luke's name. And we'll test that one more time. I think I named him Johnny Appleseed, actually.
Yeah.
Cool. And I tested this once before to make sure it was working, and I just did it now. And if we notice, it's put everything in here for us. Gildan 5400s, expected quantity 55. Production notes, looking for some simple Printavo logo print. Artwork uploads can be found here. Here's the file that Luke gave us. We could now upload that, do whatever we want, but I see one error. Production due date is set to December 5th, 0019. So we weren't around then. And so this would probably cause some problems. And so what we need to do is we need to format that date so that it comes out how we want it in Printavo. So again, I'm going to go into my Zap and I'm going to look at the short coding, And I'm noticing that Zapier outputs things in terms of year, and they don't actually put the full year on there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build an intermediary step that's going to format a date and time. It's going to transform that shortcode so use custom value. We're going to see if this works. And it didn't like us. So we're going to try that again. Use a custom value. So we want to format an input, and our input is going to be when the Zap runs. And we're going to transform that to month, date with there. We're going to hit continue, test and review. Boom, we got the date right. So we're going to go back into creating that invoice in Printavo. And for the production due date, I'm actually going to put in that second date and time like we talked about for the production due date. Now, I noticed that when I put it in Printavo, it didn't copy over Luke's shipping address. And so what we could do then is we could take the address. It didn't copy it over to the invoice, so I want it to be on every invoice. So instead, I'm going to put it on when it makes the quote. So I'm putting in that information there. Shipping city, shipping state. And so as you're building Zaps, like maybe you want to integrate with ShipStation, right? And this is how you have to reformat your address to be able to populate these fields. It's kind of what we call mapping would be the word for it, I guess. So I'll put all that information in there, hit continue. I'll test and review it. And every time we test and review it, it's going to send another order over to Printavo. It'll actually tell you exactly where that order is in the system. And so I can actually, if I want, copy the URL right here. And I can go into Printavo, paste it in, and here's the order, 14094. There it is right there. And so, you know, it's going to be one of those things where, you know, now you're going to have to go in here and, okay, well, we'll do screen printing and we'll type in 5400s. You know, and you know, we want blue there. And now we want to go in and do some pricing. And so the goal here today is you're not going to be able to do everything, but at least this is a nice step so that in your sales funnel now, you know, it helps your team out just a little bit more. And what I would probably do after this is I would go into Slack and I would send a direct message, and we want to send a direct message to me, knowing that, you know, something's gone in. You have a new inquiry. And that'll happen every single time, right? And so now it just sent me, you know, a Slack message, right? If then I also want to add it to MailChimp, right? We can send a campaign to someone, you know, send them a welcome email. Or if we just want to connect it to our Gmail and, you know, send an email that says, here, I'll just show you guys one right now. Send an email to the customer saying, you know, copy, you don't need to copy anyone on it. Let's see. And we could say from Campus Inc. We received your inquiry. Hi, Johnny Appleseed. Hi, Luke. Thanks so much for filling out a form on our site. One of our team members will be with you shortly. while we get a quote ready for you, please read over our frequently asked questions and guide to placing a perfect order. This will help speed up the process. We could even say, if this is a rush order, please call us immediately, at whatever number you got. You could add an attachment, right? Here's our PDF of all of our product offerings, whatever it is. And you can make that run every single time. Because once you create the hardest part of the Zap, which is like the meat and potatoes of it, the auxiliary things like sending follow-up emails or welcome emails, or, another one is if you want to go to Facebook custom audiences, you can actually add them to your custom audience so that if you're paying for any marketing or something like that, they're connecting right in there. So, the formatting tools is kind of the big light bulb for people. When they understand how formatting works, they're allowed to, it allows them to do a lot more powerful things. But what I'd like to do now is just kind of open up the floor to questions. I know I've gotten a lot of people that have messaged me personally about things. And so because this is going to be kind of our last Zapier webinar for a little bit, I would love to answer some questions, show anyone anything. If not, we can always end early, but I've got about 7 or 8 minutes that we can go through some things. So does anyone have any specific questions? No? Typing? Questions, comments? Why do you prefer Zapier over hiring a web developer? I do have web developers. A web developer is very, very expensive. Currently, just to give you guys a little background, I have a couple web developers working on some commission tracking tools where they're building out a tool that Zapier can't really do anymore, where it's taking all of my commissioned employees, it's pulling in Printavo statuses. I'll give you, if you guys want to look under the hood real quick, it assigns commissions, it tracks unique orders. I can pay out tons of things that it does. A day of development with an engineer is $700 to $800. Okay, so that system that I just showed you, just for it to do like 4 basic functions, was about $25,000 in 2 years of development, and me working with them hands-on, not really knowing a ton about dev, but doing it from the ground level. What I've learned is that it's really hard, and technology breaks so much. Zapier is $30 a month. So one thing that I tell shops is exhaust everything you possibly can do with Zapier. And then, if it's gotten you to a certain point where you're ready to hire a full-time or a developer or something, just recognize that in, 20 minutes, we built this Zap that connect a website to your shop management tool. And a developer, it might take them a couple days to do that, a couple months, a couple years, and you're going to pay every time something goes wrong. So in this tool that I've built, there's a retainer of about $500 to $600 a month just for support in case there's bugs or crashes or fixes. And it is tediously hard. So I use Zapier for all, my playground things and little connections I can make. But what's actually really interesting is when you work with developers, some of them will use Zapier too, but what they will actually use is the Printavo API. So Printavo does have a super powerful API. And if you have a development team, they can do a lot more things with the API because it is it's an open API, meaning you can push and pull data from it. So hopefully that makes sense. Good question though. Anyone else have any questions? No? As I mentioned before, I'm happy to build Zaps for people. We've got a couple shops that I'm working with. Just on the side, if there's things that you're flustered with, or if it's faster for me to build it for you, happy to do that. Just reach out to me. My email address is steven@steven.inc. You can message me on Facebook, any of those things, or just message Luke. We'll get you in touch. But hopefully this was a good series. I know Luke and the team and Jess are going to be kind of asking follow-up to see how it was. No, I don't get points for good ratings or whatever, but we want to do more of these. Definitely, we want to, have webinars on merch and webinars on bagging and tagging and webinars on, just MailChimp. So if you like these, let the team know. We'll continue doing them. But if no one else has any questions, that's about it. Hope everyone has a safe and happy holidays and don't work too hard. And hopefully we see everyone in Long Beach. So we'll see you there. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.